Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are looking at a piece of technology that I guarantee every single person listening to this has touched today.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple times. Right. You've probably touched it 5, maybe 10 times. And yet I would bet good money that you haven't actually thought about it once.
Exactly. It's the definition of invisible infrastructure. I mean, it's invisible until it breaks or until you're standing out in the rain and you can't get it to open.
Yeah, that's the worst. And we are talking about the silent infrastructure of business security. So for this deep dive, we have gone through a massive stack of industry manuals, California state licensing codes, and some pretty dense trade reports to build a complete guide to commercial locksmith services.
And we really wanted to specifically tailor this for the business owners and the property managers right here in Los Angeles.
Sure.
Because it's a fascinating topic.
It really is.
For a business owner, that lock on the front door isn't just a piece of metal that keeps the wind out. It's literally the first line of defense in a very complex legal and physical system. So it's about asset protection, sure, but it's also about life safety.
Yeah, and to kick this off, I want to ask you, the listener, a question that honestly, it kind of spooked me when I was first reading through these notes. So I want you to mentally picture your business's front door right now. Okay, you got it. Now answer this. Who actually has a key to that door?
That is the million-dollar question right there. And it's usually the one that makes people really uncomfortable.
Because is it just you? Is it your current manager? Or, and this is what got me, is there a key in the pocket of a shift lead who quit 3 years ago, who's just walking around Santa Monica or downtown LA right now because you never bothered to re-key?
That is the classic nightmare scenario. In the industry, we call that a key control failure. And frankly, if you don't know the answer, if you can't give me a specific number of keys currently in circulation, your building is not secure, period.
It doesn't matter how thick the door is.
Exactly. It doesn't matter.
Well, today we are going to fix that. We're going to help you navigate the different security layers of your business, going all the way from the panic bar on the front exit to the high security safe in the back office. And we're also going to teach you how to avoid the scams, because apparently, and I didn't know this industry is absolutely full of them.
It's a total minefield if you don't know what you're looking for.
Well, before we get into the actual mechanics of pins and tumblers and shear lines, I do want to mention who is making this deep dive possible. If you're in Los Angeles and this conversation starts to make you realize that you might have a massive security gap, you need a pro.
You really do.
You need to call West Point Locksmith. You can reach them at 310-295-4040.
And as we go through the research today, you'll see why having a specific, trusted contact matters so much. West Point is the real deal. They're 5-star rated, serving all of LA 24/7. So whether you're locked out of your warehouse at 2 a.m., or you need to upgrade your entire building's access control to something modern, they're the ones you want to call. Yeah, definitely save that number. It's 310-295-4040. Okay, so let's unpack this stack of manuals. The first thing that jumped out at me from the research is that commercial locksmithing is not just, residential locksmithing, but bigger.
Right.
It seems like a completely different animal.
It really is. It's like comparing a go-kart to a semi-truck. I mean, they both have wheels, they both have engines, but the engineering requirements behind them are totally different.
So how so? Is it just about the size of the lock?
No, it mainly comes down to two things: cycle count and life safety. So if you go to a big box store and buy a standard knob lock for your house, that latch is designed to be open maybe, 10 times a day?
Yeah, you leave for work, you come home, maybe you check the mail.
Exactly. Now think about a commercial door. Think about a really busy Starbucks in Hollywood or a retail store in a mall. That door might be opened 1,000 times a day.
Wow, 1,000?
Easily. So if you take a residential lock and put it on that commercial door, the internal springs are going to literally grind themselves to dust in a month. So the hardware itself is just built differently from the ground up.
Completely. In a residential setting, you mostly see what are called cylindrical locks, where the mechanism is strictly inside the knob or the lever. But in commercial settings, you're often dealing with what's called a mortise lock.
Mortise. Yeah, I kept seeing that word in the manuals, and it sounds so archaic. What does that actually mean?
It does sound old school. A mortise is basically a cavity or a pocket. So a mortise lock is actually this heavy-duty rectangular metal box that slides into a pocket cut into the actual edge of the door.
Oh, I see. So it's not just a hole bored through the face of the door.
Right. It's integrated right into the door's core structure, which makes it much harder to force open with a crowbar. It also allows for way more complex functions like classroom function versus storeroom function. and it's designed to take a heavy beating for decades, not just a couple of years.
Which brings up the deadbolts. The sources talked a lot about the throw of the bolt.
Yes, the throw is how far the bolt actually extends into the door frame. Commercial deadbolts usually have a longer throw, and they include hardened steel inserts inside the bolt itself.
So someone can't just take a hacksaw to the gap and saw through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The saw blade will just spin against that hardened steel.
Now, speaking of commercial hardware, there was one term that kept popping up that I've seen a million times in real life, but I never actually knew the technical name for. Panic bars.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Or exit devices if you want to be super technical about it.
Right. The big bar you push to get out of a building.
Yeah.
But the sources got really intense about why these exist. It's not just about convenience for customers, it's strictly about code.
It is absolutely code. And this goes back to some really horrific historical tragedies. Fires where people were trapped inside burning buildings because the doors opened inward or they were locked with a key from the inside and people panicked.
Oh.
Yeah. So in Los Angeles, if you have a room with a certain occupancy load, like a restaurant or a theater or a large open office, you legally must have a door that opens outward with a single motion.
Single motion egress. I saw that exact phrase in the fire codes.
Correct. That is the golden rule of life safety. No turning a knob, no pinching anything, definitely no unlocking a deadbolt. You just lean your body weight against the bar and the door opens. That is completely non-negotiable. Even if you're crawling on the floor because the room's filling with smoke, you hit that bar and you're out.
But there is a weird detail in the trade reports about dogging the key. I honestly thought that was a typo at first. Dogging the device.
I know that's a real term in the industry. It comes from mechanical engineering. A dog is a device that holds something in place.
Okay, so how does that apply to a door?
Well, think about a busy retail store. You have panic bar on the front glass door. You do not want that heavy metal latch to click shut and lock every single time a customer walks in during the day.
Right, that would be incredibly annoying.
And noisy. Plus, it wears out the latch mechanism super fast. So you use a dogging key, which is usually just a special hex key, to physically retract the latch and lock the bar in the depressed position. You are dogging it down.
Oh, so the bar just stays pushed in.
Exactly. That way the door just pushes open and closed freely during business hours. Then at night, the manager undogs it, the latch pops back out, and the door locks automatically behind them.
See, that is the kind of insider detail I love. It's a really simple mechanical fix, but it completely changes how the whole building flows.
It does. And if that mechanism fails, or if you don't have it set up right, you're either violating fire code by chaining the door shut, which you should never ever do, or you're leaving your business unlocked overnight when you think it's secure.
Okay, let's move from the heavy hardware on the door to the actual key in your pocket. Because this is the section on master key systems. And I have to say, the logic here kind of blew my mind. It feels like a giant logic puzzle.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's the nervous system of the building's security.
So, in the sources, they break down this hierarchy, and it sounds exactly like a corporate org chart. You've got the change key, the master key, the grand master.
It does sound very hierarchical,
Right.
but it's critical for property managers to understand it. Let's break it down. At the very bottom, you have the change key.
Okay.
That opens one specific lock. That's your standard employee's office key. It works on door 101 and literally nothing else.
Okay. Simple enough.
Then you step up to the master key. That might open all the doors in the accounting department, so doors 101 through 105. Above that, you have the grand master key, which opens accounting, sales, and HR. And then at the very top of the pyramid, level 7, in some of the more complex charts, is the great grand master key. That key opens everything in the entire facility.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Physically, how does that actually work? Because I have one lock cylinder on the door. How can that single cylinder accept the employee's key and the boss's key when those two keys are cut completely differently?
This is the exact aha moment for most people. Inside a standard pin tumbler lock, you have these tiny stacks of pins that block the plug from turning. To open the lock, the cuts on your key have to lift those pins to a very specific height called the shear line.
Right, the gap where the metal cylinder is allowed to turn. We've seen the diagrams.
Exactly. Now, in a standard lock, each pin stack is just two pieces, a bottom pin and a top pin. So there's only one break in the metal. But in a master keyed lock, the locksmith inserts a tiny extra metal wafer in between them called a master pin.
A master pin.
Yes, or a split pin. So imagine a stack of pancakes. Usually just have one cut right in the middle. With a master pin, you create two different shear lines in the exact same stack.
Oh, I get it. So the employee's key lifts the stack to the first gap, And then the boss's master key lifts it to the second gap.
Precisely. You are essentially creating multiple correct answers for the exact same lock.
That is incredibly clever. But wait a minute. If you're adding more gaps inside the lock, doesn't that make the lock easier to pick?
You nailed it. That is the trade-off. Every single time you add a master pin to a chamber, you are adding another potential gap in the shear line. So mathematically and physically, you are reducing the pick resistance of that lock.
So convenience comes at a direct cost to security.
Always. A highly complex master-keyed system is significantly easier to manipulate than a simple lock with only one key. It's a calculated risk that businesses take.
Speaking of calculated risks, there was another type of master key mentioned that I thought was just genius, the construction master key.
Yes. This is standard operating procedure for new commercial developments all over LA.
Explain how this works to the listener because it sounds like magic.
So imagine you're building a massive new office complex. You have
Yeah.
general contractors, painters, electricians coming in and out of that site for months. You do not want to give them the owner's permanent master key.
Right, because then you'd have to pay to rekey the entire building when construction is done just to make sure they can't come back.
Exactly. So what the locksmith does is set up the cylinders with construction master keying. The builders get a specific construction key that works perfectly, while the building is just a shell.
Okay.
Inside the lock, there are tiny ball bearings acting as the bridge for that temporary construction key. When the actual owner moves in, they are handed their permanent key. When they insert that key and turn it for the very first time, the shape of the key pushes those tiny ball bearings into a little trap hole inside the side of the cylinder.
They get trapped, like permanently.
Permanently, they fall into a small void inside the cylinder wall, and they can't ever get back into the pin chamber. So instantly, the construction key, which relied on those exact bearings to reach the shear line, stops working entirely.
That is brilliant. It's like a self-destruct sequence for the old key.
It is. You don't have to call a locksmith to rekey the lock. You literally just turn the new key once, and all the old construction keys are dead. It saves developers so much money.
I bet. But let's talk about the exact opposite of that. Let's talk about when you don't want keys to be easily duplicated. Because one of the biggest risks for a business owner is a disgruntled employee taking their key down to a kiosk at the mall and just making a copy for their cousin.
Huge risk. And that is where we get into restricted keyways.
What does that mean exactly? Is it just a weird-shaped key?
It's both a unique shape and legal protection. A standard keyway, like the keys you see hanging at Home Depot, usually called an SC1 or a KW1, that shape is public domain. Anyone can manufacture or buy the blank keys. A restricted keyway uses a key blank that is strictly patent protected by the manufacturer.
So the automated mall kiosk physically doesn't have the metal blank to even try cutting it?
Exactly. They cannot get it.
Yeah.
The manufacturer severely restricts the distribution of those blanks to specific licensed locksmiths only.
And I assume there's a paperwork side to this too for the business owner.
Yes. Even if you manage to go to the correct authorized locksmith, you have to be on the official signature list. If you, as a random employee, walk into West Point Locksmith and say, hey, copy this restricted key, they're going to pull the authorization file. If your signature isn't on that card, you are not getting a key. End of story.
That is real control.
It is. If you're running a business in Los Angeles with high turnover, like restaurants or retail, a restricted key system is almost mandatory. Otherwise, you have absolutely no idea how many unauthorized copies are floating around the city.
Now, the sources also touched on high-security hardware features. We always hear terms like pick-proof in movies, but the expert guides we read were very clear that there's really no such thing as pick-proof, only pick-resistant.
Correct. Given enough time and skill, almost any mechanical system can be bypassed. But you want to make it as difficult and time-consuming as possible. High-security locks, like Medeco or Multi-Lock, use special internal pins. The sources mention spool pins and mushroom pins.
Yeah, they sound like Mario Kart items. What do they actually do inside the lock?
They do sound fun, but they're incredibly frustrating for intruders. A normal pin is just a smooth, straight cylinder of brass. A spool pin looks like a thread spool. It's skinny in the middle and wide on the ends. If someone tries to pick it with a tool, the pin tilts and the fat part gets snagged in the shear line. It gives false feedback to the person picking it.
So the intruder thinks they've successfully lifted the pin, but they're actually just physically trapped.
Exactly. And then you have even more advanced features like sidebar cylinders. In these locks, the key doesn't just have to lift the pins to the right height. The cuts on the side of the key physically have to rotate the pins to a very specific angle to allow a secondary locking bar the sidebar, to drop into place. It's essentially two locking mechanisms happening at the same time.
That sounds incredibly precise.
It is, and that's exactly why commercial locksmithing is a skilled trade. It's not just grinding chunks of metal, it's precision engineering.
But speaking of skilled trades, we do need to talk about the dark side of this industry. We need to talk about the locksmith scam. The state sources were full of warnings about this.
Oh, this is a massive plague in the industry, specifically in big metropolitan areas like Los Angeles.
So, walk the listener through the anatomy of this scam. How do they actually get you?
It almost always starts online. You're locked out of your business, you're panicked because customers are waiting, and you Google locksmith. You see a promoted ad for a $15 service call or a $29 service call,
Which instantly sounds too good to be true.
because it is.
Yeah.
A legitimate licensed business in LA cannot roll a heavy truck, pay for California gas, and pay a skilled technician for $15. It's mathematically impossible. But you call the number anyway, and they usually answer with a very generic phrase like locksmith service instead of an actual company name.
Red flag number one.
Big red flag. Often the person answering isn't even in California. They're sitting in a call center somewhere else, just selling the lead to a local subcontractor. They dispatch a guy who shows up in an unmarked vehicle, no branding, no uniform, maybe just a cheap magnetic sign slapped on a beat-up sedan.
And then the price changes, I assume.
Immediately. He walks up, looks at your totally standard commercial lock, shakes his head, and says, "Oh, it's not security. I can't pick this. I'm going to have to drill it out."
And drilling completely destroys the lock.
Right. So now he charges you an exorbitant fee for the drilling labor and then charges you a 500% markup for a really cheap replacement lock he just happens to have in his trunk. That $29 phone, quote, turns into a $600 bill in about 20 minutes.
That is infuriating.
It is. And they prey on your urgency. They know you just want to get your business open and you feel trapped.
How do we actually protect ourselves from this?
Yeah.
The sources mention some very specific California regulations that business owners should know.
Yes. California takes this very seriously. Under the California Business and Professions Code, a locksmith legally must be licensed. And they're required to carry what's called a pocket card.
A pocket.
It's a state-issued identification card with their name, their valid license number, and their photo. If you hire a locksmith in LA, immediately ask to see that pocket card. If they fumble around or say it's back in the truck or just don't have it, do not let them touch your door. Send them away.
And you should check the vehicle too, right?
Absolutely. Legitimate pros usually have permanently branded vans. They are proud of their business. They aren't trying to hide who they are.
You know, this feels like the perfect time to bring West Point Locksmith back into the conversation. Because everything you just described, the transparency, the proper licensing, the clear pricing, that is exactly what they offer.
Exactly. West Point Locksmith is an established professional operation. They aren't going to pull a bait and switch on you. They are local to LA. They have the verified 5-star reviews to back it up. And they're fully licensed and insured with general liability.
And they cover the full spectrum, everything from emergency commercial lockouts to the high security keyways and access control systems we're talking about today, plus car key replacements if you need that. So again, if you want to avoid the scam artists entirely, call West Point at 310-295-4040. Do not gamble with your business security.
And honestly, building a relationship with a trusted locksmith before the emergency happens is key. You really don't want to be Googling random numbers at 2 a.m. when your storefront glass is broken.
That leads perfectly into our next segment, maintenance, upgrades, and cost. Because I think a lot of business owners hesitate to call a locksmith because they're terrified of the bill, but the sources suggest there is a much cheaper way to handle employee turnover than constantly changing all your locks.
Yeah.
Rekeying.
This is probably the most common financial misunderstanding in the business. If you fire a manager who has a set of keys, you do not need to go buy new hardware. You don't need a brand new mortise lock or a new deadbolt.
What actually happens during a rekey then?
The locksmith simply takes the existing cylinder out of the door, dumps out the old internal pins, and puts in a completely new set of pins that mathematically match a brand new key cut. The heavy, expensive metal hardware on the door stays exactly where it is. It is significantly cheaper than replacing the whole lock.
So you're just changing the software essentially inside the physical hardware.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
What about physical attacks, though? We talked about picking, but the sources also mention lloyding, which sounds like a 1920s gangster term. I'm going to go lloyd the joint.
It really does. Lloyding actually comes from the word celluloid. It's the classic credit card trick you see in all the spy movies. slipping a thin piece of plastic between the door and the frame to push the spring latch back.
But does that actually work in real life on a commercial building?
On poorly installed commercial doors, absolutely. If the dead latch isn't engaged properly, or if the building has settled and there's a big gap between the door and the metal frame, someone can slip that latch in seconds.
Wow, how do you stop it?
The fix is incredibly simple and cheap. A latch guard. It's that heavy metal plate you see covering the gap on the outside of the door, usually bolted right over the handle area. It physically blocks the credit card or the screwdriver from reaching the latch.
That seems like an absolute no-brainer investment.
It really is. Every single back alley door of a business in LA should have a latch guard installed. It costs almost nothing compared to the massive loss of a break-in.
Now, as we move toward the end here, we're moving into the future of the industry. Electronic access control. The trade reports highlight this as the fastest growing sector. We're talking biometrics, keypads, card readers. Why are so many businesses ditching metal keys entirely?
It all comes down to control and data. We talked about audit trails briefly earlier. If you have a standard metal key, you have absolutely no idea who opened the back door at 10 p.m. on a Saturday. Was it the night cleaner? Was it the assistant manager? Was it some guy who stole a key?
You are just completely flying blind.
Right. With an electronic access system, the door lock keeps a constant digital log. User 4 opened the door at 10:12 p.m. That data is invaluable for a business owner.
I imagine that is huge for liability and HR issues.
It's massive. And on top of that, you can revoke access instantly. If someone rage quits on a Tuesday, you don't have to call a locksmith to come out and rekey the building. You just log into the software on your phone and delete their code or deactivate their fob. Done in 10 seconds.
But the sources also specifically warn about the DIY mentality with this stuff. Buying a cheap smart lock on Amazon and just slapping it on a commercial door yourself.
Oh, that is a terrible idea. First of all, residential smart locks often aren't fire rated for commercial use, so you could be actively violating LA fire codes. Second, they just aren't built for the high traffic cycle counts we talked about.
Right.
But third, and most importantly, what happens when the AA batteries die?
You're locked out.
Or worse, you're locked in during an emergency. True commercial access control systems are hardwired. They have heavy battery backups and specific fail-safe or fail-secure modes that consumer gear just doesn't have.
Right, and that really connects back to the overall cost reality. The sources are very clear that commercial locksmithing carries a premium. You are paying for legitimate expertise, for proper licensing, for insurance.
You are. And you're paying for the physical reality that commercial hardware is heavy and difficult to work with. Taking a solid core commercial door off its hinges to fix a continuous hinge problem that's a two-person job sometimes, it is not a quick DIY fix.
So if we look at the big picture here, what is the ultimate mission for our listener today? If they're sitting in their office looking at their door right now, what should they be thinking?
They should be asking themselves one question. Do I actually have key control? Do I know exactly how many keys exist for this door and who holds every single one of them? If the answer is no, or I'm not sure, you have a major security vulnerability right now.
And you shouldn't wait for a break-in to find out.
Exactly. The universal recommendation in these manuals is to schedule a commercial security assessment immediately. A legitimate pro, like West Point, can walk through your property, check your fire code compliance, make sure those panic bars are working safely, check your master key hierarchy, and look for those simple vulnerabilities like needing latch guards.
It's preventative medicine for your business.
It truly is, because it is always cheaper to upgrade a cylinder today than to deal with the insurance claims and the lost operational time after a burglary tomorrow.
Absolutely. So let's wrap this up with a final thought on where the industry is heading, because we've gone from medieval metal wards to AI-powered biometric scanners in this deep dive.
It's been an incredible evolution. But here's a thought I want to leave the listener with to kind of mull over. We are currently rushing towards ultimate convenience. Fingerprint locks, unlocking the office doors with our Apple Watches, and it is amazing technology. I use it myself.
Sure, it's cool. It feels like the future.
But every digital system inherently has a digital vulnerability. Software can be hacked. Batteries eventually die. Firmware updates glitch out. Cloud servers go down.
Right. We've all seen the outages.
Exactly. But the purely mechanical key, the pin tumbler system that was essentially perfected in the 1800s, it doesn't need a software update. Doesn't need Wi-Fi to work. It just reliably works.
Always.
Always. So as you upgrade your business to the absolute latest smart tech, you have to ask yourself, is the physical metal key actually becoming obsolete? Or is it quietly becoming the ultimate unhackable backup artifact that you simply cannot afford to lose?
Wow. That is a powerful thought. Are we treating core security for daily convenience, or can we properly engineer a way to have both?
You can have both, but only if you plan it right from the beginning.
And to help you plan it right, one last shout out to our sponsor, West Point Locksmith. Give them a call at 310-295-4040. Seriously, pull out your phone and put them in your contacts under security right now.
Do it before you actually need them. You'll thank yourself later.
Exactly. Well, that does it for this deep dive into commercial locksmith services. We hope you'll never look at a front door the exact same way again.
Stay secure, everyone.
See you next time.